Hey everybody, it's Abishur Prakash, aka Mr. Geopolitics. As November approaches, everybody's wondering what will happen next in geopolitics. October was a pivotal month. The US and China returned to where they were in April, on the precipice of a massive fight. There is new uncertainty in Gaza, even though a ceasefire has been enacted. And the situation in Ukraine is only getting worse. November will take these flashpoints and raise them up the ladder of escalation. November is setting up to be a geopolitical month, a month where flashpoints and fights evolve, mature, and reach a new inflection point. There are 5 big ticket items that every leader should be paying close attention to. Don't forget to stay until the very end, where I share a wild card that could take the world by storm. Let's jump right in. First, November is the month of global summits. There's the G20 summit in South Africa, there's the APEC summit in South Korea, and at the tail end of October was the ASEAN summit in Southeast Asia. All of these gatherings bring together world leaders, many of which have serious hangups and differences with one another, not at the least being with the US President Donald Trump and his tariffs. If nothing is achieved in November at these gatherings, if they're simply about photo shoots and optics, then many will further distance themselves from these gatherings and meetings in the coming years. If the US and China can't resolve their differences at APEC, if the absence of US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit in South Africa means that nothing much materializes, then many will view these groups as afterthoughts and increasingly seek out alternatives to guide their foreign policy, trade, and geopolitics. Second, North America has been rocked by Trump canceling the trade negotiations with Canada over an ad spearheaded by the Ontario government. This has resulted in the US and Canada returning to where they were just a few months ago, where fears of new tariff walls, of new economic tit for tat was on everybody's mind. This is now the direction the US and Canada are moving in. Much of it depends on whether Trump decides to do a 180 or doubles down and raises the heat on Canada from trade to security. And considering some of the other threats Trump has made to other nations, like threatening to kick out Spain from NATO, Canada could see its closest ally behaving very differently than even just a few months ago and proposing ideas that force Canada to either bend the knee or even move away from the US permanently. Third, move from North America to South America, where US assets continue to amass near the Venezuelan border, where Venezuelan officials are warning that they've stockpiled thousands of Russian anti-aircraft missiles, signaling that they're ready to strike the US if America attacks, as US assets and US naval warships build up in the Caribbean. November could be the final month where Trump pulls the trigger and begins to strike cartels and other targets within Venezuela, or where the US and Venezuela find a middle ground. If the US does decide to strike Venezuela, it won't just be limited to that specific country. There will be massive regional fallout. When the US struck a drug boat carrying Colombian nationals, Colombia warned that this was not just an attack on Colombia or Venezuela, but this was a war against all of South America. This is exactly what I warned would take place if the US struck Venezuela, that this wouldn't just be a war between the US and Caracas, this would be a war against South America, not directly, but economically, considering the cascading effect of a war and what it could do to economic growth, foreign investment, and development throughout the region. Fourth, November could see the US-China fight evolve in very serious and dangerous ways. Already the US and China are locked in a strange new dance where at one moment they're raising the heat on each other, and at another moment they're engaging in diplomacy. Now, alongside China's expanded rare earth curbs, the US has proposed what can only be described as a technology nuclear card, where it could ban the export of goods designed with US software, from jet engines to chips. This would fundamentally change the US-China relationship and the global economy, meaning if the US and China can't put aside their differences and find a solution at the APEC summit, November could see both sides returning to fighting in the most bloody ways, creating shockwaves that the entire world has to adapt to and leading to the most extreme policies that fundamentally change how the world works. Fifth and lastly, in November, the brief romance between the US and Russia may permanently end. The US has sought to bring Russia a little bit into the spotlight compared to where it's been since the war in Ukraine began. The Alaska summit was supposed to reset relations that have fallen through the cracks since the war began in 2022. However, little that has happened since then points to a rapprochement between the US and Russia. Instead, the US is now threatening massive sanctions on Moscow. China and India are beginning to maneuver differently, and Russia is effectively rejecting whatever America threatens and directs it to do. This is setting the conditions for a new showdown between the US and Russia that eclipses anything that's taken place over the past 3 years. Whether this means seizing Russian assets and using them like the hundreds of billions of dollars owned by the Russian central bank currently frozen in Europe, or whether this means arming Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles, November could see the US-Russia fight out in the open, the romance dead, and caught in the middle could be Ukraine, where America hits Russia and Russia retaliates through Ukraine. And every time Russia retaliates through Ukraine, America hits Russia again, once again putting Kyiv in the crosshairs of both sides. Also in November is a wild card. Zohran Mamdani may win the November elections for mayor of New York City, a race that he's currently leading. If he wins, the self-proclaimed socialist won't just be introducing policies for all of New York City, millions of people. What he does could be watched around the world, from rent control to crime management to transportation to capping the price of groceries. Many other governments facing the same headaches in their own societies may be watching Mamdani with a single question in mind. Could socialism work for them back home? And this extends the race and election in New York City to the global ideological fight playing out around the world, where democracy is facing off with communism and socialism as to which ideology and doctrine should dominate regions across the world. That concludes my November 2025 geopolitical forecast, covering the 5 big-ticket items that every leader should be paying close attention to, plus a socialist wildcard. If you're thinking about the new design of the world and the new big transformations that you should be paying close attention to, check out my latest report on geopolitical capitalism. The link is in the description. If you resonated with this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and drop a like. Until next time, Godspeed and good luck. This is Mr. Geopolitics signing off.